But it isn't just the overt references to Blackness that David just analyzed for us. It's also the soundscape, and I will talk briefly here about testing the theory of how the sonic color line works and how race in this time period, particularly European ideas about race, particularly in connection to imperialism, the enslavement of Africans, and building the so-called New World of the Western Atlantic. They're using sound to work out and build race, and Shakespeare uses sound in this play to evoke ideas about race. They're not just sound effects as we might think of them now, especially the thunder and the way that the thunder in the play and is associated with the witches and that space of the wilderness, right? And it's this hierarchical border, a sonic color line being built between white civilization and this dark and tempting wilderness and wildness. Thunder's out of the control of humans. It's louder than any sound at the time human beings could make. It's the sound of this wild and unruly space of the forest. And the word hurricane comes into the English lexicon in 1555 in direct reference to the Caribbean. So thunder is quite literally imagined in this new space. And thunder, you'll note, also opens The Tempest, which is more obviously one of Shakespeare's race plays. And the fact that Macbeth comes first and kind of Tempest harkens back, I think is really critical. So the thunder in this play is this uncultivated space, right? The space of the not godly that draws Macbeth. It's race engendered by the witches and who are literally beyond order. They need to be called into order. And a lot of some great work by Richard Cullenrath, is an ethnic studies scholar at the University of Hawaii. He wrote a great book called How Early America Sounded, and it's greatly informing our reading here. And essentially it's how England interpreted sound and what kind of gets pulled, white England, and what gets pulled into and kind of takes root here in the in early America. So bells are actually kind of the sounds of order, and we see bells here throughout the play. Alarm bells. Bells are associated with Lady Macbeth, who is usurping power. She hears the bells as an owl's shriek or a hideous trumpet. So she's hearing these bells, and she can't kind of assume the power of the bells. She can't even hear them that way. They had real official power. Bells were the sign of a godly community, set as the opposite of thunder. So opposite that many church bells at this point were still engraved with Latin phrases like fulgura frango, I subdue the thunderbolt. So ringing the bells was thought to stop thunder and the damage that thunder was thought to cause. And the bell extends the power of rulers beyond the human voice. And again, when Lady Macbeth, she tries to usurp that power, she calls that bell the knell that summons Duncan to heaven or to hell. And so that's really critical, that interplay between the bell and the thunder in this play, and the way that the thunder is also bringing in the other and the temptation, the danger of the other, and really comparing it to and kind of hierarchizing it below the sounds of the order of the court. And this whole play is about the restoration of the order of the court, right?
Yes, and along with that too, the animal sounds are signs of nature reflecting Scotland's socio-political chaos and disorder, and also the racial chaos as well. Macbeth fails to be an ideal white man in that he is not good, and also because his manliness is deficient, as Lady Macbeth's rhetorical critiques of her husband's manhood confirm. Macbeth cannot wipe the black scruples from his damaged soul like Malcolm can, and quickly does in Act 4, Scene 3. And the power of whiteness that Macbeth lacks is embedded in the trumpets and drums initially used around the presence of King Duncan as sound markers of class, royalty, and also race, his kingly whiteness. And thus they are linked to the play's racial politics. And the battle sounds toward the play's end are representative of the fight between good and evil, or more locally between Macduff and Black Macbeth, representing a common racialized early modern trope of Blackness, the kinds that Kim Hall calls attention to in Things of Darkness. Macbeth is depicted as devilish, a treasonous enemy.